The Vietnam War was a proxy conflict of the Cold War, lasting from 1955 to 1975. This war pitted communist forces against anti-communist ones in Southeast Asia. Following World War II, Vietnam was divided at the 17th parallel. The North became communist under Ho Chi Minh, while the South was anti-communist. The United States feared the spread of communism through the domino theory. This theory held that if one nation fell to communism, neighboring countries would follow like falling dominoes. U.S. involvement escalated after the 1964 Gulf of Tonkin incident. This event gave President Lyndon B. Johnson the authority to increase military action in Vietnam. The Vietnam War marked a significant tactical shift from traditional frontline battles to guerrilla warfare employed by the Viet Cong. Unlike conventional warfare with clear battle lines, guerrilla tactics relied on mobility, surprise, and blending with the local population. A major challenge for U.S. troops was that the Viet Cong were often indistinguishable from the civilian population. This created a climate of constant paranoia, making it difficult to identify friend from foe in villages and rural areas. The Viet Cong employed hit-and-run tactics, striking suddenly at U.S. forces before disappearing into the dense jungle or elaborate tunnel systems. These quick attacks disrupted American operations and avoided direct confrontations, where U.S. military superiority would be decisive. The tunnel systems, like those at Cu Chi, were incredibly complex underground networks that included kitchens for preparing food, hospitals for treating the wounded, and command centers for coordinating operations. These subterranean complexes allowed the Viet Cong to sustain prolonged resistance against superior forces. The United States attempted to counter Viet Cong guerrilla tactics through superior technology and firepower. Unable to match the insurgents in jungle warfare, American forces relied on overwhelming air power and chemical weapons to disrupt enemy operations. Operation Rolling Thunder was a sustained bombing campaign against North Vietnam, beginning in 1965. For 3 years, American aircraft conducted thousands of sorties, targeting infrastructure, supply lines, and industrial facilities to weaken the North's ability to support the insurgency in the South. Chemical agents played a major role in the American strategy. Napalm was a flammable jelly dropped from aircraft, creating intense fires that destroyed vegetation and enemy positions. Agent Orange, a powerful defoliant, was sprayed over millions of acres to strip away the jungle canopy that concealed Viet Cong forces. These chemicals had devastating long-term effects. Agent Orange caused widespread deforestation and soil erosion, while exposing both Vietnamese civilians and American veterans to toxic dioxins that led to severe health issues, including cancer, birth defects, and chronic illnesses. Search and destroy missions complemented the air campaign. These operations sent American troops into the field to locate and eliminate Viet Cong units, with success measured by enemy body counts rather than territorial gains or strategic objectives. In January 1968, during the Lunar New Year celebration known as Tet, North Vietnamese and Viet Cong forces launched a massive surprise offensive against over 100 cities and military outposts across South Vietnam. While U.S. forces eventually reclaimed all the captured territory, achieving a military victory, the offensive proved to be a devastating political and psychological defeat for the United States. On Jan 30, 1968, Tet Offensive begins. Public approval of the war stood at 50%. On Feb 1968, U.S. counterattacks. Public approval of the war stood at 40%. On Mar 1968, U.S. military victory. Public approval of the war stood at 35%. On April 1968, public shock. Public approval of the war stood at 25%. On 1968, approval drops. Public approval of the war stood at 20%. The intense fighting, captured live on television cameras, shocked the American public who had been assured the war was nearly won. This marked a turning point that dramatically shifted public opinion and the course of the conflict. As the Vietnam War escalated overseas, it also sparked unprecedented controversy at home in the United States, becoming the most divisive conflict in American history. The anti-war movement grew rapidly, fueled by widespread opposition to American involvement in Vietnam. This was the first war broadcast live on television, bringing the horrors of combat directly into living rooms across the nation. Additionally, the draft system was seen as unfair, disproportionately affecting working class and minority youth, while wealthier individuals could often avoid service through deferments or other means. A pivotal moment came in 1970 at Kent State University, where National Guardsmen opened fire on student protesters, killing 4 and wounding 9. This tragedy intensified anti-war sentiment nationwide. The counterculture movement embraced symbols like the peace sign and protest posters, representing opposition to the war and calls for social change. Finally, the credibility gap emerged as Americans grew increasingly distrustful of government reports about the war's progress, widening the divide between leaders and the public. For the first time, journalists were embedded with troops, sending raw, unedited footage of combat back to living rooms every night. This contrasted sharply with the optimistic official briefings from the Pentagon, which were shown alongside the grim reality broadcast on evening news with anchors like Walter Cronkite. The 1971 leak of the Pentagon Papers revealed that the government had systematically lied to the public and Congress about the scope and goals of the war. The Vietnam War officially ended with the 1973 Paris Peace Accords, which provided for American withdrawal from Vietnam. However, the war continued between North and South Vietnam until the fall of Saigon in 1975, when communist forces captured the city and unified the country under communist rule. The war left a lasting psychological impact on America, known as the Vietnam Syndrome, a period of public and political reluctance to engage in large-scale foreign military interventions. This skepticism influenced foreign policy decisions for decades. In 1982, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial was dedicated in Washington, D.C., designed by Maya Lin. This reflective black granite wall, inscribed with the names of over 58,000 American service members, became a powerful symbol of healing and remembrance. The war also led to significant domestic changes. The 26th Amendment lowered the voting age to 18, arguing that those old enough to fight should be able to vote. Additionally, the War Powers Act of 1973 limited the president's ability to commit troops without congressional approval. Ultimately, the Vietnam War exacted a tremendous human cost, over 58,000 American lives and millions of Vietnamese casualties. It fundamentally altered American society, fostering a permanent skepticism toward government authority and military interventions abroad.